Everyone knows Selena Gomez as one of the most influential artists of her generation, a global superstar with hundreds of millions watching her every move. But how many people know that behind the fame, she was fighting a disease that nearly killed her, battling depression, anxiety, and a bipolar disorder that pushed her to the edge of collapse? Most people think she was simply blessed. She wasn't. In this motivational success story, you'll see how she went from hospital beds and mental breakdowns to becoming a global symbol of resilience and healing. It happened in a cold hospital room, long before the world realized how close she came to losing everything. Selena Gomez, only in her mid-20s, lay on a narrow bed surrounded by white walls, fur lines, and the quiet hum of machines fighting for her life. Lupus had ravaged her body so severely that doctors warned, without a transplant, she wouldn't survive. The surgery was supposed to save her, but complications hit harder than anyone expected. At one point, her new kidney began to turn, threatening to fail. Nurses rushed in. The monitors spiked. A small team in blue gowns fought to keep her alive as Selena drifted in and out of consciousness. Her body shutting down, her mind sinking into a darkness she could not name. And yet, that wasn't the worst part. When she finally woke up, weakened and stitched, the pain wasn't just physical. It was the heavy realization that her fame meant nothing here, that millions of followers, awards, red carpets, interviews, none of it could protect her from her own body or the crushing weight inside her chest. That moment, the moment she realized she could die despite having everything, became the silent breaking point. A point where she whispered to herself, "Maybe I'm not strong enough for this." But the truth is, that was the beginning of her transformation. Selena Marie Gomez was born in 1992 in Grand Prairie, Texas, a small town with quiet streets, modest houses, and families who stretched every dollar to make ends meet. Her childhood wasn't coated in glitter or spotlight. It was shaped by instability, uncertainty, and a mother fighting to raise her alone. Her mom, Mandy, was just 16 when Selena was born. Barely more than a child herself, she carried the weight of adulthood overnight, juggling school, odd jobs, and the bruising reality of being a teenage mom in a conservative town. The marriage between her parents didn't last long. When Selena was 5, the divorce came, splitting her world into two uneven halves: love and struggle, hope and disappointment. There were days when the electricity almost went out, days when Mandy counted change at a gas station, hoping it was enough for one more gallon, days when the fridge held more empty shelves than food. Selena remembered the heaviness of those years, the silence of a small apartment, the feeling of being different from other kids, the way her mother tried to smile even when her eyes were tired. And she remembered the emotional gaps that seeped into her childhood, the kind that children sense but cannot name, the quiet arguments behind closed doors, the nights filled with worry instead of warmth, the shifting homes as her mother searched for work and stability. Yet, in the middle of that chaos, something else was forming. A spark. Mandy was passionate about theater. She performed on small stages, community shows, local productions, barely earning much, but pouring her soul into each role. Selena, watching from the seats, was mesmerized. The lights, the costumes, the applause. It was the first place where she felt safe, where stories replaced sorrow, where pretend worlds felt kinder than the real one. But even then, childhood didn't let her escape unscathed. At school, she was shy and often misunderstood. Her clothes weren't as nice as the others. She moved schools more than once. She felt the sting of being the outsider, the girl who came from a broken home, who didn't talk much, who hid her emotions behind careful smiles. And then there were the nights, the ones Selena would later talk about in interviews, when she and her mom would sit on the floor of their tiny living room, dreaming loudly because dreaming was the only thing they could afford. One night, Mandy told her, "We might not have much, but we have each other. And that's enough to start." That sentence lived in Selena for years. But hardship has a way of leaving shadows. The insecurity of those early days, financial instability, emotional turbulence, the fear of losing the people she loved, planted seeds of anxiety that she would battle long into adulthood. The cracks in her childhood didn't break her, but they shaped the way she carried pain. Quietly, internally, with a smile that sometimes hid too much. And it was this mix, love, struggle, fear, ambition, that pushed her toward the path that would change everything. because from those small-town theaters and uneven childhood nights, a dream began forming. A dream big enough to pull her into an industry far harsher than anything she had known: the entertainment world. Selena's first steps into the entertainment world began not with fame, but with curiosity. She was barely 7 when she joined her mother backstage during a small community theater play. The air smelled like old curtains, paint, and cheap hairspray. Actors hurried past, adjusting costumes and whispering lines. For most children, it would have been overwhelming. For Selena, it felt like home. She asked her mother if she could try acting, not because she dreamed of stardom, but because she wanted to feel closer to Mandy, to the world that had given her mother light during the darkest days. Her first real break came when she landed a small role on Barney and Friends. Bright-colored sets, oversized costumes, cheerful songs. It was a world far from her real life. But behind the smiles, Selena carried a quiet pressure. Don't mess up. Don't lose this chance. Don't go back to nothing. When the show ended, she found herself adrift. Casting directors told her she wasn't expressive enough. Too shy. Too quiet. Not Disney enough. She auditioned for over a year. Dozens of failed attempts, countless, will call you messages that never came. There was one audition, Selena later recalled, where she walked out holding back tears. She felt the sting of rejection so sharply that she told her mom she wanted to quit. "It's too hard," she whispered. "Maybe I'm not good enough." But hardship had shaped her resilience early. And Mandy knew that turning back now would haunt her daughter forever. She encouraged her to keep going, to try one more time, just one more room, one more casting director. Then the call came. Disney wanted her. The bright studios, the endless hallways, the stern producers who smiled without emotion. Everything felt larger than life. Selena, still young and soft-spoken, entered a system designed to polish children into stars, or break them in the process. She started with small guest roles on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and Hannah Montana. It wasn't glamorous. It was long hours, constant rehearsals, retakes, criticism, and an invisible pressure she didn't yet understand. Then came Wizards of Waverly Place. Her first leading role. Her first taste of real fame. But with every step forward, the world around her grew heavier. Disney demanded perfection. A perfect smile, perfect public persona, perfect behavior. There was no room for mistakes. No room for sadness. No room for the insecurities she carried from childhood. Behind the scenes, she was still a teenager trying to figure out who she was. But the cameras, the scripts, the expectations, they didn't care. Selena once said this period felt like living inside a glass box. Everyone could see her, but no one could see through her. What the world didn't know was that, beneath the growing success, cracks were already forming. Cracks that would widen in the years to come, turning her rise into a painful descent before she could ever rise again. Fame didn't arrive for Selena in a quiet way. It hit like a spotlight. Sudden, blinding, overwhelming. Wizards of Waverly Place became a cultural phenomenon. Her face was everywhere. Billboards, magazine covers, Disney Channel promos looping endlessly on millions of screens. Selena Gomez, the girl who once struggled to afford gas money, was now the global teen icon, the kind companies fought to sign and fans waited hours just to see for a few seconds. But fame, as she would learn, is a double-edged glare. On the outside, she was the perfect rising star, a lead actress, a growing singer, a style icon, a socially responsible role model. The media praised her as graceful, unproblematic, the good girl of Disney. She smiled on red carpets, waved politely, gave interviews filled with hope and gratitude. But on the inside, something else was happening. The more successful she became, the more she felt the pressure tightening around her chest. The schedule was brutal. 14-hour days on set, followed by vocal training, dance rehearsals, photo shoots, charity events, then more filming. Sleep became rare. Rest became impossible. Privacy became non-existent. And then came the internet, a tidal wave of opinions. Adoration mixed with cruelty. Millions judged her body, her voice, her relationships, her personality. Every flaw magnified. Every mistake dissected. Every rumor turned into a headline. Selena once described it as drowning while people watched. Her music career took off next. Hit songs, world tours, sold-out arenas. Fans screamed her name so loudly she could feel it vibrating in her bones. But backstage, when the lights dimmed and the cheers faded, she often sat alone. Exhausted, disconnected from herself, wondering why the success she worked so hard for felt strangely empty. During this time, she also stepped into roles beyond acting. Producing, activism, brand collaborations. The world praised her for being multi-talented, hard-working, unstoppable. But being unstoppable isn't always a compliment. Sometimes it's a warning sign. The cracks that formed during her early career started spreading. She began experiencing fatigue so intense that she could barely stand some days. Her face puffed. Her joints ached. She felt a heaviness in her body that no amount of rest could erase. Doctors initially brushed it off as stress, the cost of fame, they said. But deep down, Selena knew something was wrong. Meanwhile, the public pressure escalated. Her personal life became a battlefield. Tabloid drama, fandom wars, and online hate that cut deeper than anyone imagined. Every relationship she had was turned into a spectacle. Every breakup became a war fought by millions on the internet. The world only saw her glow, not the growing shadows behind it. And yet, through the noise, through the exhaustion, through the tightrope between success and self-destruction, Selena kept working. Because for years, she believed that stopping meant failing. And failing meant letting down her family, her fans, her younger self who dreamed on a living room floor in Texas. But the body can only endure so much. And the heart can break even in the brightest spotlight. What Selena didn't know then was that her world was about to collapse. Not from the pressure of fame, but from a hidden battle inside her own bloodstream. A battle that would push her to the brink and change her life forever. It began quietly. Whispers of pain in her joints, exhaustion that clung to her like a shadow, migraines that blurred her vision. At first, Selena blamed it on stress, overwork, endless travel. She told herself she just needed rest. But rest never helped. The fatigue deepened. The pain sharpened. Something inside her was unraveling. Doctors finally delivered the word that would rewrite her life. Lupus. An autoimmune disease that made her own body attack itself. For a girl whose career depended on energy, presence, and perfection, it felt like betrayal. Her body turning into an enemy, a silent storm destroying her from the inside. But she didn't stop working. She didn't slow down. She hid it. Because stopping felt like disappearing. And disappearing felt like failure. As the disease progressed, the symptoms escalated. Her weight fluctuated. Her cheeks swelled. Her exhaustion became bone deep. Some days she woke up unable to lift her arms. But the cameras still rolled, the fans still screamed, the media still demanded answers for every change in her face or body. Online comments turned cruel. People who knew nothing about her illness accused her of letting herself go, drinking too much, being lazy. Those words cut deeper than any physical pain, because the disease was invisible. And invisible battles are always the hardest to prove. Behind closed doors, her mental state crumbled. Anxiety clawed its way into her thoughts. Depression wrapped itself around her like a heavy blanket she couldn't lift. There were nights she stared at hotel ceilings, wondering how someone with so much could feel so hollow. Days when she walked into rehearsals with a smile so practiced it felt like another costume. Then came the breaking point. In 2014, her blood tests showed her kidneys were failing. Fast. Dangerously fast. Doctors told her she had only one option, a transplant. Soon. Selena later admitted she didn't fully understand the gravity at first. She was young, famous, busy. Too busy to process that her life was hanging on a thread. But the truth caught up with her quickly. Her body was shutting down. Her skin turned pale. Her heartbeat weakened. She fainted more than once backstage. And in one of the darkest confessions of her life, she admitted, "My mind can be a dangerous place." By this point, fame felt like a cage. Her health felt like a ticking bomb. And her own mind felt like a battlefield. She checked herself into treatment facilities more than once, away from cameras, away from expectations, trying to hold on to something she didn't know how to name, herself. But the worst was yet to come. Her body was failing faster than hope could keep up, and the transplant she needed, the one thing that could save her, was not guaranteed. The search for a kidney donor became a race against time. Her health was deteriorating so quickly that even short walks left her breathless. Her skin grew paler, her heartbeat weaker. She often sat curled on her couch, wrapped in blankets, fighting waves of nausea and fear. Fame couldn't shield her now. Cameras couldn't hide what her body was losing. Then came an act of love she never expected. Her best friend, Francia Reisa, walked into the room one day and said calmly, firmly, without hesitation, "I'll get tested." Days later, the results came back. A perfect match. Selena cried. Not loud, dramatic tears, but silent ones that spilled over from a gratitude too heavy to contain. She knew what this meant. Francia wasn't donating a handbag or a weekend of her time. She was giving up a piece of her body to keep Selena alive. The surgery was scheduled. Selena tried to be brave. She posted hopeful updates for fans, but inside she was terrified. Because the truth was brutal. People don't always survive this. In the cold operating room, as she lay under blinding white lights, she whispered to herself, "Please, not yet." The surgery began, and at first it went well. But complications came like a sudden storm. Her new kidney started to turn. The doctors rushed. Machines beeped in frantic rhythms. Nurses moved swiftly, voices low but urgent. Selena's blood pressure dropped. Her breathing faltered. She drifted between worlds, consciousness and darkness, feeling herself slipping. Her mind, already fragile, spiraled into fear. She later described it as watching herself from somewhere far away. It took hours to stabilize her. When she woke up, pain shot through her body. But beneath the physical agony was something deeper. A realization that even surviving didn't erase the emotional collapse already happening inside her. Recovery wasn't peaceful. It was slow, frightening, and filled with doubt. Some days she couldn't stand without help. Some nights she woke up drenched in sweat, afraid the kidney would fail again. And the pressure outside was relentless. The world expected her to return as if nothing had happened, as if a life-saving surgery was just a break. But something was breaking, not on her skin, inside her mind. She spiraled into depression. Her anxiety became unmanageable. Her thoughts raced too fast, too dark, too loud. And in one of the most vulnerable moments of her life, doctors diagnosed her with bipolar disorder. A revelation that both shattered and saved her. She said, "Knowing what was wrong saved my life." But healing wasn't immediate. She entered mental health facilities multiple times. Quiet, secluded places where she handed over her phone, her schedule, her fame, everything. There, she learned to sit with her emotions instead of running from them. She confronted childhood wounds she had buried under years of success and noise. She learned to breathe again, slowly, painfully, intentionally. The outside world saw none of this. To them, she was simply taking a break. But inside those silent rooms, Selena Gomez was fighting for something far bigger than a career or an image. She was fighting for herself. The girl who survived a broken home. The girl who survived Hollywood. The girl who survived lupus. The girl who survived her own mind. She had hit the lowest point, the moment where everything collapses and you either rise or disappear. And it was here, in this fragile quiet, that Selena chose to rise. Healing didn't arrive for Selena in a single moment. It arrived in fragments. Small, trembling decisions made on days when she barely recognized herself. The turning point came during one of her therapy stays, when she sat in a quiet room with nothing but a notebook, a window overlooking a garden, and the weight of her thoughts. She wrote down everything. Her fears, her anger, her loneliness, her exhaustion. She wrote until her hands shook and her eyes burned. For the first time, she confronted a truth she had avoided for years. She wasn't broken. She was overwhelmed and unheard. Understanding her bipolar diagnosis became the first spark of clarity. It didn't fix everything, but it gave her a map, a way to understand the storms inside her head instead of drowning in them. Selena once said, "Once I knew what was happening in my mind, I could finally fight it." She began building a new version of herself, slowly and carefully. She committed to intensive therapy. She practiced mindfulness. She cut off toxic relationships that drained her. She set boundaries, sometimes for the first time in her life. She allowed herself to say no, allowed herself to rest, allowed herself to be human. She stopped chasing perfection, stopped living for the approval of strangers, stopped letting fame dictate her identity. Instead, she began choosing stillness, long walks, journaling, quiet dinners with people who truly loved her. She found comfort in simplicity, in real conversations, in the small pockets of peace she had once been too busy to notice. And she discovered something even more important. Being vulnerable didn't make her weak. It made her real. Her return to the public wasn't explosive. It wasn't a triumphant shout. It was a gentle re-entry. Honest, raw, stripped of pretense. When she released "Lose You to Love Me," it wasn't just a song. It was a closure, a farewell to old cycles, emotional, relational, and psychological. A declaration that she was choosing herself, even if the world didn't understand. The world listened. The world felt it. And for the first time in years, Selena felt something she hadn't felt before. Control. Purpose. A quiet but powerful rebirth. The girl who almost lost her life was now rebuilding it. Carefully, intentionally, beautifully. She wasn't healed yet, but she was healing. And that was enough to begin again. Life after the storm didn't turn Selena into a flawless hero. It turned her into something far more powerful, a woman who understood her scars and refused to hide them. In the years following her transplant and mental health battles, Selena rebuilt her life with a different rhythm. Slower, calmer, intentional. She no longer lived for the cameras or the applause. She chose projects that fed her soul, not her image. She surrounded herself with people who respected her boundaries. She learned to say, "I need time," and she meant it. Her music shifted too. Rare, "Lose You to Love Me," and later My Mind and Me weren't just albums or films. They were emotional documents. Pages of her life written in melody and confession. For the first time, she wasn't performing healing. She was living it, one imperfect, beautiful day at a time. But her greatest contribution came outside entertainment. Together with her mother and a close partner, she co-founded Wonder Mind, a mental fitness ecosystem dedicated to helping millions understand their minds, the same way she had to learn to understand hers. Workbooks, resources, conversations, podcasts, open dialogue. Selena used her own pain as fuel to build a space where no one would feel alone the way she once did. She didn't hide her bipolar diagnosis. She spoke about it publicly, calmly, bravely, honestly, giving voice to people who didn't have the platform or courage to speak for themselves. Every interview, every documentary appearance, every time she stood in front of a microphone and said, "I struggle too," she made the world a little softer for someone else. Her influence grew beyond entertainment. Schools, therapists, advocacy groups, and young people around the world pointed to Selena as a symbol of strength. Not because she was perfect, but because she survived. Yet, her life wasn't a straight line upward. There were setbacks, days of anxiety, nights of doubt, moments where old wounds reopened. But resilience isn't the absence of pain. It's the decision to keep going despite it. And Selena kept going. Through philanthropy, through storytelling, through music that healed, through conversations that mattered, through honesty that saved lives she may never meet. Her legacy isn't defined by charts or trophies. It's defined by something far more enduring: the courage to turn private suffering into collective healing, the bravery to show the world that vulnerability is strength, the reminder that mental health isn't a weakness, it's a journey. In the end, she became more than an artist. She became a lighthouse, steady, imperfect, but always shining in the dark for anyone searching for their way out. Selena Gomez's journey is a reminder that even the brightest lights cast shadows. She grew up in uncertainty, rose into fame too early, broke under pressures no one saw, fought an illness that nearly took her life, and battled a mind that turned against her. And yet, through every fracture, she rebuilt herself with honesty, vulnerability, and a courage that didn't need to be loud to be powerful. Her story teaches us that healing is not a straight line. It bends, breaks, circles back, and moves forward again. That strength isn't found in pretending to be unshakable, but in admitting when you are hurting. That real resilience is born when you stop running from your pain and begin understanding it. Selena didn't overcome darkness by being perfect. She overcame it by choosing herself, over fame, over expectations, over the fear of being misunderstood. And maybe that's the lesson we're left with, that in a world obsessed with shining, it's okay to pause, to breathe, to fall apart and rise slowly. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, "I'm still here." So, what's your story?